My Hero Academia episode 11 of season 3, or episode 49. This episode certainly brought a new meaning to the word hype, because a lot of people have been hyping this episode up for quite a while. Ever since it was shown in the manga, people have been waiting for this to be animated, and honestly, I don't blame them at all, because it is the most important and the most iconic fight in the series to date, which is why a lot of people have been waiting for it for over a year. I don't know exactly how long, 1 year or so, a little more than a year, but yeah. And we finally got to actually see it in the anime, which is why this week is probably gonna include a lot of My Hero Academia stuff on Twitter and on social media in general, because I feel like even though, there may be better moments in this series and the better moments in anime in general, this one is certainly one of the most hyped up ones, which is why you can expect to see a lot of people talking about it. You're gonna see a lot of people going back to this moment when discussing certain topics a lot of the time, because it is just one of those fights where, it has a lot of weight in terms of the story, but it also is a pretty good fight. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's not one-sided. It is certainly a well-balanced fight, and it is something that I think you could consider to be one of the better fight in this series. I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna argue with me when I say that. Like, when looking at only the fights in My Hero Academia, this is definitely one of the better fights that we've been having, including the manga. But I'm not gonna get into the manga because, well, some people may not have read the manga, and so I'm not gonna be an asshole and spoil you. However, what I want to talk about primarily in this review is actually not so much the actual fighting, but I want to talk about what was going down, beyond the fight itself. Kind of like how when All For One was talking to All Might, he was distracting him with words, telling him that Shigaraki was Shimura's grandson, which is the truth. I mean, it's not like he's lying, it's just that he wanted to bring it up at such a crucial moment where All Might would be just so distracted, He wants to make sure that All Might wasn't gonna be given any moment to really catch up to him. He wanted to make sure that All Might was caught by surprise when he said this, and what better time to do that than during their biggest fight, their most important fight in their lives. All Might is about to lose his power indefinitely, as well as the fact that All For One, he is not intending on holding back whatsoever. Like, this man does not care about All Might. In fact, it's said in the episode that he hates All Might just as much as All Might hates him. So it's not a love-hate relationship we're going with here. It's actually just a straight-up hate-hate relationship. And because of the fact that All Might lost his power in this episode, like pretty much indefinitely, like he's not going to be able to use his muscle form, if you want to call it that, the way he used to look before he received his injury by All For One like 5 or 7 years ago. I can't remember exactly how many years ago it was, but the wound that we found out about in episode 1 or 2 of the anime, he's now unable to really use his strong form. I mean, he may be able to, use it for maybe a few seconds and whatever, and then go back to his skeleton-based form, the one that's extremely skinny and basically incapable of self-defense on any level. And this will obviously be putting even more weight on Deku, because that means that Deku is gonna have to step up to the plate even sooner than he may have thought he would need to, because of the fact that, if a villain comes around that no one else can actually handle, maybe the current one-for-all user is going to have to actually be the one to stop said villain. And of course, if such a moment arises, Deku is going to have to understand that, it's his time. He's the current one-for-all user. He's perfectly aware of the fact that he is holding a power that's unlike any other in the series. Although it's not necessarily the straight-up strongest at the moment, it has the potential of becoming the absolute strongest quirk in the series, especially given how All Might was the strongest by far in this series. So Deku has the potential to become even stronger than that, seeing as the quirk apparently stockpiles power based on the previous users and all of that. So obviously, when Deku can fully control this quirk, at his 100% limit, he's gonna be something else for sure. But the point is, he may have to start working even harder from an earlier point. He can't keep relying on All Might now as he has been up until now. Like, up until now, if Deku doesn't meet whatever expectations, or something like that, All Might has always been able to step in and help everybody, but he can no longer do that because of the fact that obviously he can't use his quirk anymore, so he's not going to be able to defend anyone. So like he said in the past, he wasn't always able to save everyone. Well, now he can't save anyone. That's the difference we're looking at, and Deku is really going to have to understand that. He's going to have to really take responsibility for the quirk that he has accepted upon his body. Another thing that I really want to talk about is, of course, the whole thing when All Might said "you're next," you know, on the TV at the very end of the episode pretty much. And because as stated in the episode deck, you realize this as well. Most people view this as a thing where, okay, he's telling this to future villains, you know, "you're next," because he was able to beat All for One. You know, they're gonna interpret that as him being there to help out society. But what's actually going on is, of course, as we viewers know, based on this episode, is that he was actually indirectly pointing at Deku. He was telling Deku, "You're the next one for all user, time to step up." That's pretty much what he was saying. So even there you can just see how this episode is just trying to force Deku into a position where he has to really take responsibility. Now, All for One's quirk, that's something that I really would want to get into, because obviously we saw him use quite some interesting quirks in this episode. Now, we didn't really see him use any particular quirks that maybe stood out or anything that we may found familiar from the past. That's not really what I mean, but what I want to talk about is just the manner in which he uses his quirk, because it is quite interesting in my opinion. Like, I like how he's able to really merge quirks together, like to create combination attacks in the way that he did. Like, he was just naming a bunch of quirks and, you know, they all pretty much just stacked up on each other and created this massive arm where he was able to pretty much put All Might in a corner where All Might could barely defend himself, mostly because of the fact that his power was running out, of course, but also the fact that, you know, All for One, he's no pushover. All for One doesn't hold back. Even if All Might was at his fullest, I don't think it would have been as simple as put All for One down. I think even at full power, All Might would have had trouble here because of the fact that he had to use so much power. He has to keep All for One at bay. He had to expend every fiber in his body pretty much, at least as far as his quirk goes, in order to put him down. He had to sacrifice his entire quirk. That's how far All Might had to go in this episode and last episode. This fight really showed us that All Might has no chance of being a hero anymore. I mean, he's gonna be loved probably by society despite how people were reacting when they saw his form, because of the fact of what he's done in the past. You know, although he may not be able to be an active hero anymore, he's done so much in the past that people are still gonna look up to him, and that's something that I really admire about All Might's character. It's that he's made up as this symbol of peace, right? But it's not just about whether he's a strong hero, you know. It also has to do with what he's done in the past and how people are going to look at that even from a future perspective. Like, they're gonna look back and say, okay, this man, he was a pillar. He's never gonna be forgotten because of what he's done. Even if he can no longer be a hero, you know, even if he has to retire for whatever reason, we're still going to love this man. The only one that's had a slight issue with this was, of course, Endeavor, because of the fact that Endeavor has always looked at All Might and not really hated him, but disliked him for the fact that the gap between them is so big. You know, he's been trying to catch up to All Might, and now he's seeing All Might just being reduced to this point where he can no longer be an active hero. And Endeavor doesn't like that because he wanted to catch up to All Might fair and square. He didn't want All Might to be reduced to that point where Endeavor would just become stronger by default. So he obviously has a slight issue with that, but at the same time, it's not like he hates All Might for it. It's more like, if anything, I think he hates All for One for putting All Might in such a position. He just doesn't really put it that way. He doesn't really say that straight out. He's not really saying, All for One, what have you done? Now I can no longer catch up to my strongest rival. I mean, that's what he means, but he doesn't say that. He puts it on All Might more than anyone, really. At least that is what it's being portrayed as. It's being portrayed as him putting the blame on All Might, when really, he's not. He's really not, although it may look like that. I understand that. On the inside, he is obviously blaming All for One, but on the outside, he's putting the blame on All Might. That's just all there is to it. Anyway, I don't really have much to add in terms of this episode, so I'm gonna end this here. I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments, what you thought about this episode or this fight in general, counting even last week as well as this one combined, because, you know, I think it's best to judge the whole fight rather than looking at the episodes individually. But yeah, I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments, and as always, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and remember everybody, Toga is waifu, Toga is life.